Absolutely. All right, so a vehicle ban on a Michigan island did not stop Vice President Mike Pence from traveling there with an 8-car motorcade on the island. Pence arrived on Mackinac Island by helicopter and then made his way down one of the island's main streets with the trucks. He was there Saturday for a Republican Party conference at the Grand Hotel. The SUVs were brought to the island by ferry for his visit. Pence is the first sitting vice president to visit the historic island, where the vehicle ban has been in place since 1898. When President Gerald Ford visited the island in 1975, he and the First Lady traveled by horse-drawn carriage. Joining us now, author and journalist Tom LoBianco, who has covered the vice president's political career since his very first campaign rally in Columbus, Indiana. Tom's out with the new book entitled Piety and Power, Mike Pence and the Taking of the White House. Very interesting. Great to have you on. You point out in the book that he's a lot more cunning than the media gives him credit. What did you find out?
I couldn't see it when I started covering him 8 years ago, and I didn't always see it when I was covering him day to day. But boy, when I pulled back for this book and started getting more behind the scenes, it's a calculated run for the White House. And let me point to something really important. You know, there's an idea out there that they think he's predestined for the White House. He doesn't really get bit with the White House bug until 2008, and this is when the Movement Conservatives Council for National Policy, David McIntosh, some other folks start trying to recruit him to run for president. And what we see is a change in trajectory in his actions and his movements from when he's a congressman to then he starts positioning himself. And I think that's what we have right now. That's where he is right now. It hasn't changed. It's just delayed the schedule. Team Pence is looking at 2024 right now.
So, Tom, Mike Pence is planning on continuing after, if there is a successful reelection, he would run in 2024.
What his advisors told me, and this kind of goes counter to a lot of the wild stories that we hear about him out there, what they told me is that the best they can hope for is the H.W. Bush, right? You run on two continuous successive terms of Trump, and then you try to ride the coattails. And then obviously this is going to be significantly different than Reagan, but it's better than coming off a losing cycle and trying to come back in like a Dan Quayle fashion, perhaps.
So, Tom, we've had the vice president on just prior to him being elected vice president. We had him on when he was governor. And he comes in very sincerely, a lot of eye contact, a lot of double hand grasping, you know, how are you, how have you been, stuff like that. So my question to you is, who is he really behind that stuff? Is that who he is? And is he the kind of man who would fall on his sword for Donald J. Trump?
He has to. I think he has to. Remember on the Access Hollywood weekend, he has that opportunity to remove or boot Trump, whatever, from the ticket. And they say no. And this is according to my reporting. I've seen other reports out there. Based on everything I can tell, he can't say no because he loses the base. Okay? Yeah, and I mean, you see it right now. This is what he's doing. Over the summer, if you recall, he had these two terrible events. July, that weird thing where he kind of flies out to New Hampshire, gets called back at the last minute. Nobody knows what's going on. 2 weeks later, they send him down to the detention camp, and there's this terrible video of him with this grim face, which should have been Trump, frankly. That should have been the president in there, not the vice president. At least that's what the VP's aides and allies were telling me. They see that as Trump yanking on the leash. These are fealty tests. These are loyalty tests. And frankly, for some, not all of them, but for some of them, they see it as incredibly demeaning of him. And it goes to this point of him playing the long game. He has to survive. The talk, and I wrote this for Yahoo News a couple weeks ago, the talk about Jared and Ivanka talking up ways of getting rid of him. Politically, you need to bring back suburban voters, women. That's all very real, and the way that we know it's real, and now of course they deny that, let me put that out there, right? They flatly, their people say that's not accurate, but the way we know it's real is by the actions of Pence and his team.
Hey, Tom, this is Michael Steele.
Hey.
There's so much that
sort of dovetails off of Mike Barnickel's question about who is Mike Pence. But a big part of Mike Pence is Karen Pence.
Yes.
And the role that she has played very powerfully but very quietly in sort of helping him position and deal with some of this. So here's a two-parter. How has she influenced his decisions to stay with Trump, this, you know, given their evangelical moorings and how they've sort of worn that on their sleeves? And what role will she play going forward once you turn that inevitable corner where Donald Trump is a lame duck, and the next iteration of either his legacy through his vice president or something coming explicitly from Pence himself gets to the center stage?
Realize that everything they're doing right now is about survival. You don't want to rock the boat one way or the other. What's interesting is, and to your question about Karen's role, it's a joint venture with them. If you go back in this history, go back in Mike's history from before he meets Karen, friends describe him as someone who's very philosophical, very interested in long talks. Karen kind of puts the blinders on him and makes him focused on, okay, let's put that into action in the mid-'80s, and that's when you see him start to run for Congress. Where they are right now, and I think this is why you saw Karen Pence kick up the new Karen Pence Twitter feed, is she puts out that video. They have to be a team together, and they have to be a team behind Trump, face forward 2024. Now, one thing I report in the book, and this is really important to understand, is that she is the sole gatekeeper to Mike Pence. If you want to, when I talked with lobbyists in Indiana and in Washington, if you want to move the needle at all with Mike Pence, it has to go through Karen. And one thing I saw is that I used to think that his longtime chief of staff, Bill Smith, in Congress and then in the governor's office, was in that inner circle with Karen. But it looks like he is the actual gatekeeper. Now you see Marty Obst, who some Trump aides and some Trump advisors refer to as the Karen whisperer. And they like that. They need that because they know they can get through to Karen through him.
Wow. The book, Piety and Power, Mike Pence and the Taking of the White House, is on sale tomorrow.